Right, ready? Let's do it.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Tailoring Talk Show with me, your host, Roberto Revilla. I'm a bespoke tailor, menswear designer, and founder of Roberto Revilla London Suit and Shirt Makers. This is the podcast where you drop in for the threads, but often leave with something quite unexpected. If you haven't already, please support the show by subscribing and leaving us a rating and a review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It's time for part 10 of the Tailoring Talk James Bond-athon, where we follow the James Bond film series in order, ticking off each movie as each month goes by. My guests and I deep dive into each film, covering everything from our overall review to the plot, clothes, gadgets, cast, behind-the-scenes stories, and our favourite moments. Step back into the Tailoring Talk time machine as we head to 1977. After the longest gap between Bond movies to date, The Spy Who Loved Me finally made it to movie theaters worldwide, and we cannot wait to get into this one. Once again, I'm joined by the mortgage advisor who loved me. It's Philip Rahman. Philip, how are you?
Bobby, how you doing? You all right?
I'm good, thank you. How are you feeling? Because you did message me before we got on to say you weren't feeling too well. You look good, though.
Thanks, man. Doing Movember, so I got rid of the beard and trying to grow them stuff. And it's so far working out all right. And later on this month, I'm going to be doing a really long walk to raise awareness as well. So that's what's been going on.
Oh, okay, cool. John's disappeared, so this is completely messing up my intros. He's gone again, hasn't he? Okay, well, John will be with us at some point, and now it's just completely muffed up what I was going to do for him. Anyway, from the Play Pause Turn podcast, we have the Android fanboy who loved me. It's the voice of reason, Alex Hansford. Alex, how are you?
Hello, Bobby. I'm good. I hope you listened to the latest podcast. Samsung versus Apple. I ended up having both devices, so I had to pit them against each other.
I know that was a nice surprise actually, and we will be plugging that time and time again as this episode progresses. I'm hoping that we do get John back, but actually, do you know what, Alex? You pretend to be John for a second, okay? Next, it's the teacher who loved me with his beautiful, rich, golden voice, which today, funnily, sounds a little bit like Alex Hansford's voice from the Play Pause Turn podcast. It's John Evans. John, how are you?
Well, hello, Bobby. How are you? How's it going? I've got to speak really close to the mic like this. It's very important.
It's and you have to lower your voice an octave.
So that's as low I could go. I can't go any lower than this.
It's yeah. This is seriously. It's the 10th episode.
It's not working for you, is it?
I was going to say it is kind of working, but I would be lying to you. John, please come back. Last but not least, we have a new guest whose support we have appreciated so much. He's contributed from afar with his enthusiasm and feedback after every episode, the subject of weird looks on his commute as he's giggled at by Londoners everywhere. What he doesn't know about Bond cars is not worth knowing. It's the client who loves me, Kevin Foster. Kevin, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
What an intro! Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. It's quite strange seeing the faces behind all the dulcet tones. I am the laughing man on the morning commute from Hampshire. So good to be.
Brilliant. No, honestly, thank you so much. When I was writing the client who loved me, I thought that sounds kind of cheeky and funny. But now saying it out loud, it sounds extremely rude. But I'm his tailor, everybody listening at home.
And Bobby, all I can say is nobody does it better.
Thank you so much. Now I know what music to use for my 20th anniversary Instagram montage. And we will go back and do our John. Hello. He's frozen again. We've totally lost him. Okay. Let's get into it. Right. So before we get started, let's get our spoiler alert in nice and early. This film has been out for 45 years, but for those of you who haven't seen it, we will be spoiling the living daylights out of this one. Yes, I have not come up with a new thing for that. Sorry, I will try harder. So if you haven't seen The Living Daylights, and if you haven't seen The Spy Who Loved Me, hit pause, go see the movie and rejoin us after. So The Spy Who Loved Me was released July the 7th, 1977, with a runtime of 2 hours. Budget of 13.5 million, which was double that of the previous two films. But it grossed a whopping $185.4 million. It was seen as a return to form for the series, and this film is rated by many as Roger Moore's absolute standout movie of his 7-picture run as 007. Stars Roger Moore as James Bond, Barbara Bach as Major Anya Amasova, Carl Stromberg as Kurt Jurgens, Richard Keel as Jules, Caroline Munro as Naomi, alongside returning cast regulars Desmond Llewellyn, Bernard Lee, and Lois Maxwell. So let's go to Phil. Phil, was this your first time? I'm talking about the film.
This is first time I saw it. I saw it yesterday. This came up coincidentally the year I was born. And what really struck me about this film was that this kind of took us away from Sean Connery as Bond, and it really kind of brought out Roger Moore's strengths more. And I was thoroughly entertained by this film, and I would happily see this again.
Yeah. Year I was born as well. Now the secret's out the bag. Everyone thinks I was born in 87. Alex, was this your first time?
It was not. No, it wasn't my first Bond, but I've seen this before, but it ages. So in some ways it ages really well because it's a very good Bond, but in other ways it ages really badly because of most of the misogyny. But it is really funny, so you let it off of a lot of this stuff. But yeah, no, it's really good. It's a really good Bond.
Yeah. Kevin, this is obviously not the first time. Sorry.
I'm also feeling very old. I was 9 when this film came out.
Wow.
Silver Jubilee year, nonetheless. Remember it?
And when did you see it when it came out, Kevin?
No. I think it must have been the first Bond film I saw on telly, the proverbial sort of wet Sunday afternoon when it came on telly. And it's the one, I guess, the first one I really remember of watching in the Bond films. But you know, it's definitely up there as one of the top ones and one of my favourites. But the only thing I would say is when I watched it again for the 15th time on Saturday, and the 2 words I wrote down were brown and beige. So that tells you all you need to know about the late 1970s. But great film.
Did you write those 2 words down underneath the heading, things I need to talk to Bobby about that I need to add to my wardrobe next?
Well, you know, all I remember about the late 1970s is that time in your life when your parents buy your clothes for you. And I remember this hideous brown beige knitted tank top that I got given that was made to wear. And oh God, I think I've still got sort of like fashion trauma. I'd reckon there's a guy on Tottenham Court Road. You can turn up and you can sort of unburden yourself of all your sort of like fashion traumas from an early age. You give him a big check at the end of it. He sends you a couple of nice clothes afterwards, and you go away happy. So I mean, you know, but, yeah, I think that's the problem. Must be it.
All our seasonal meetings have been about is just undoing your PTSD that reappears every 6 months
exactly.
or so. Yeah. No, brilliant. Glad to be of service. On your secret service? No, God, I need to stop trying to do bomb puns. So I saw it this weekend. It's the first time I've actually seen it all the way through, because I'd obviously seen bits of it when I was a kid. Like Phil, 77's the year that I was introduced to the world, just after Presley died. Elvis Presley, that is. And I remember, obviously, Jaws, I remember for this. I remembered the fight from the train. I remembered the fight in the scaffolding or whatever. I had no idea, obviously, where it was. And that was pretty much... Oh, and obviously the Lotus Esprit as well. The weird thing was, given that I've not seen this film for probably about 35 years or more, I was able to quote the film seconds ahead of dialogue happening in those key sequences. And obviously Roger Moore's double entendres as well. So I was obviously paying some attention when I was about 6 years old. And I just absolutely loved it. I had such a great time with it. I really, really did. And I know we usually wait till the end of the episode to give our ratings and so on. So I won't go that far, but this is going to score very, very highly for me. I thought it was absolutely wonderful, and it was a real return to form. And I totally agree with Phil that it suddenly we have Roger Moore's 007, not, you know, sort of half Roger Moore, half trying to be Sean Connery kind of thing that was going on the last couple of films. So yeah, no, it was absolutely great. So the plot overall, the storyline involves a reclusive megalomaniac named Karl Stromberg who plans to destroy the world and create a new civilization under the sea. Bond teams up with Soviet agent Anya Amasova to stop the plans, all while being hunted by Stromberg's powerful henchman Jules. So the reason why there was quite a big gap, so 1974 to 73 on this film, is that it was in a bit of limbo because firstly you had the breakup of Harry Saltzman and Cubby Broccoli, and eventually after a couple of failed deals, Saltzman was bought out, and so he departed the franchise. So for the first time, everything was on Cubby's shoulders, and he decided to basically just go all out. Doubled the money, just threw absolutely everything in the kitchen sink at it, because it was like this was like the last throw of the dice for James Bond, because the last two films, you know, were still financially successful but hadn't been greatly received. There was still this Sean Connery hangover going on. Then they ran into development problems with the script. Firstly, they had to come up with a whole original script because Ian Fleming had allowed them to use the name of the book. The book was, I think, originally released in 1962, but they were not allowed to use any of the elements of the storyline. They went through a whole bunch of different screenwriters, and then eventually, when they managed to get to a form of script and were about to start shooting, our old friend Kevin McClory reared his head again, and it took them to court for plagiarism, etc., etc. And so they had to kind of sort all that nonsense out.
So that's interesting, isn't it? Because that's why there's no Blofeld and Spectre actually in the movie, isn't it?
Exactly.
Because one of the court issue was that you can't use those names in the films. They had to come up with a new set of baddies.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
But also the significant thing was that the main baddie, who was, remind me, Stromberg, he wasn't the major villain. He wasn't the major star in it. The major star was actually Jaws, and he doesn't even say anything.
Well, you couldn't really with those teeth, could you? Let's face it, but dialogue was probably a little tricky.
Yeah, but then it was just like with Darth Vader. The main character is actually played in body by who was the name? Prowse.
Yeah, the green cross, the green cross code.
Yeah. But it's actually spoken by James Earl Jones. It's probably a similar thing. It's better that he didn't speak. They gave him this no dialogue, which made him more mysterious and much more iconic as well.
Yeah, he wasn't really meant to be talking anyway. John is back. John.
Hello.
Can I do my intro for you, please?
Yes. Does it involve poxy internet in any way, do you think?
Yeah, I'm not going to bother editing
aged
this.
Gadgets,
Yeah, I'm not going to bother editing this, so this is exactly as it's going to be. But next, it's the teacher who loved me with his beautiful, rich, golden voice from the Play Pause Turn podcast. It's John Evans. John, how are you?
A little bit vexed by modern technology. I think I've reached that upper echelon of the Douglas Adam age, that the one about get to a certain age and every bit of tech feels bewildering to use. Anyway, I'm good. Very good, thanks.
Good. Well, talking because you've been so excited to get to this particular film because it has one of your favorite probably your favorite Bond villain
Roger
ever.
Moore.
No, that's Bond. I'm talking about Bond villain.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, Jaws.
Yes, exactly. And it's probably like me. It's probably the first sort of Bond film that you were highly aware of as a kid growing up, right? But having rewatched it recently for this, was that the first time you've seen it in a long, long time, or is it one that you've repeat watched many times over the years?
No. I mean, it's probably the one I've watched the most in my life because of just when it came out, but I haven't seen it for years. Yeah, no, it's but I still really enjoyed it. I'll come to that later on, but yeah, I haven't seen it for years.
Yeah.
We're all sitting there waiting for that scene in the beach, weren't we, though? Let's be honest.
Oh, when the Lotus comes out of the water.
Yeah.
Oh, it's absolutely iconic. I mean, there's so many iconic moments in this movie. It's crazy. So yeah, now we're sort of going backwards and forwards in my normal order, and I've got completely confused. But anyhow, so I think we're going to do, rather than a plot run through, we're going to go sort of cast, locations. We're going to go in categories, yeah. So so let's talk about casting first of all. Roger Moore's back. Obviously, we're very happy to see him. They hired Lewis Gilbert in the end. They went through so many directors, and in the end, they brought Lewis Gilbert back, who previously directed You Only Live Twice 10 years before. And it's really funny because not just that director, but You Only Live Twice, there are some similarities between the films. Thankfully, not the dodgy hair pieces that we saw Sean Connery don in that movie, but the plot is kind of loosely the same, because in You Only Live Twice, you had those sort of phallic-shaped space shuttles swallowing other ones, and in this one, you've got massive super tanker that is swallowing atomic submarines and harvesting their missiles and stuff like that. But I think that was pretty deliberate because, you know, they kind of figured we need to kind of get back to some sort of formula. So obviously Roger Moore's back. One of the very last castings, because they seem to just cast the Bond girls at the last minute, was Barbara Bach as Agent Triple X.
There's a name, isn't there? Agent Triple X. In the great tradition of Bond films about giving your leading lady a porn star name, I mean, you know, Triple X. That's something, isn't it?
That literally only just occurred to me just this second.
Okay. Really?
Really?
Yeah.
Come on, Bill.
We really do find that hard to...
It really did.
And just for everybody at home, in case you're wondering why we never hear from John ever again on this episode, it's because his internet's let him down again. So yeah, I don't think John's going to try again. He's just told me on Discord that this will be the last attempt. So anyway, so Barbara Bach as Triple X, because now I can't remember her name. Anya Amasova. That's it. And what's his face? Kurt Jurgens was Carl Stromberg, who's the villain of the piece. Let's focus on Barbara Bach first of all.
Yes. Yeah.
What? Right, Kevin. How was she? Bond girls to date, how did she do?
I thought that she's up there in the top echelons of Bond girls, I feel, for all her parts. So joking apart, though, I don't know. She probably the first Bond girl that actually has more than a passing love interest. You think? You know, compared to previous films. I mean, you know, we're not in the quite where we are now when we get to No Time to Die, but perhaps, you know, the first Bond girl I think that actually does more than just turn up, smile, take her clothes off and sleep with a leading man. But yeah, no, great. I think you know, I think she plays the part well, and you know, has much more depth to her character than some of the previous ladies we had in the role.
But not Diana Rigg.
But not Diana Rigg. No, I wasn't going to mention that, but no. Okay, fine. Well,
Yeah,
you know,
she's
each
still
to
number
own.
one.
As my father would say, it wouldn't do if we all like the same.
Alex, how was Barbara Bach for you?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to work out the right way of saying it.
You can disagree
very
with what
good.
he just said.
No, I thought, to be honest, I thought she was okay. I was more interested. More interested in Valerie Leon because she was the receptionist.
Oh,
Yeah.
at the
Who
hotel.
had at the hotel, just it was like everything was framed around a certain part of her anatomy.
Yeah,
And,
that was a serious outfit she was wearing as well.
It
Wasn't
was, and
Yeah.
and also there was this weird dynamic between the two girls, and I was like, where is this going? This is a Bond film. It's not going to go anywhere else. But like, what's going on here? Because
Even if you
you two are not going to fight it out. So what's I don't know. Anyway, I was a little bit distracted with her, but I thought she was the other one was a solid 8.
Sorry, which one? The receptionist or the main Bond girl of the film?
No,
Well, sounds like both at the same time, preferably.
I'd give them both an 8. If you turn the 8 on its side, that's just there we go.
Oh my god, Philip, let's just talk about all the Bond girls in general here for the sake of time. But Phil, have at it. Phil's frozen now. John,
I think we
were just talking about Barbara Bach.
Ringo's wife.
Yes.
There seems to be a bit of a sort of 1970s theme of extreme décolletage in the films, and as try as I might watching this, I could not look at her face, and I struggled a lot. And my wife was next to me, and even she was saying, goodness me. I was most impressed, in fact, with the 1970s bra companies for keeping them in at all times. I thought all the action she was doing, she was never undignified in her way she moved around, and I was quite impressed with that. And I think
you're talking about the
cleavage.
Yeah. Like being sort of dangerously close to popping out.
Well, yeah, God, it was just amazing because she was doing, a lot of, she's a major, she's lots of flying kicks and things, mostly at the beginning of the film. And I thought basically when was nylon invented? Was it the 60s or 70s?
I have no idea. Why are you asking me?
I don't know. I just thought I'm just thinking that she did a very good job of holding it all in more than anything else.
Okay.
Do they have double-sided sticky tape? Apparently that's the secret, according to Mrs. Foster.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that was the thing in '77. So,
it was because another a very small, independent, low-budget sci-fi film called Star Wars came out shortly after.
Great film, by the way. Just fantastic film, brilliant, love it. Sorry,
oh yeah, no, thank you, because other client, Rich, I don't know.
I might just say.
Yeah, was it the Live and Let Die episode where he confessed that he'd never seen it before?
Never seen Star Wars.
God, honestly, Richard, if you're listening to this, which you will be, when I see you next, you're going to get a slap across the back of the head after I've taken your Amex off you.
Give him a Star Wars Blu-ray, just and then put it on the bill.
I'll tell you what he's done though, right? I'll show this to you guys.
Hide it in one of his pockets when you and say, "Oh no, it's in the pocket."
Rich, bless him. He sent me The Godfather. He sent me Goldfinger, Thunderball, Live and Let Die, Diamonds Are Forever, You Only Live Twice, and he sent me a DVD of Our Friends in the North, and I have no idea what that has to do
series.
Other than the fact it stars Daniel Craig.
It's very good, apparently. I've not seen it, but I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, that's the only thing he asked me to send back when I'd finished with it. So thank you, Richard. But you need to see Star Wars. So anyway, we were back to taping breasts, and Carrie Fisher had to tape hers down because there were no bras in space. So that was the most famous usage of taping of female things. Phil, Bond girls in this film.
Okay, so as far as Barbara Bach, I mean, she was clearly a well-written character, and she's very, very beautiful. wouldn't say she was particularly memorable compared to some of the other Bond girls I've seen. But I think, what she had to do, she had to kind of come across with this kind of weird sort of Russian accent, which I don't think suited her, which then probably made some of her acting feel a bit uncomfortable. But at the same time, she delivered the writing as well as she could. And I think she did the best she could based on the kind of her as an actress. I think this was very much more centered around Roger Moore and Jaws, and everyone else. Oh, and also the other character I really liked was the guy that Roger Moore met in that kind of weird Lawrence of Arabia scene, where he's getting the information about Calbert and Fekish. And he's like, and he's got this real sort of like really wealthy sort of, Arabian sort of mood where he's like, oh, this bores me. You just want this information. You're so tiresome, And then there's all those other like Bond girls who we think he's going to get it on, and he just comes up with one of the better double entendres from the very end of that scene as well. So
is that his old Cambridge friend from in the sort of
his old Cambridge friend,
where he has to delve deep into the pleasures of Egypt, I believe.
What
exactly?
What was Bond's shag count in this film? Was it 4 or 5? Got to keep track.
Okay, so let's see. So he must have well, we know that he did XXX, so that's 1.
There's the girl in the snow at the beginning, so wasn't there?
The girl in the snow at the beginning.
Because he had to pull out
the Egyptian harem. I mean, we're assuming you just had 1 at that point.
Yeah. So we'll just say 1 there. He didn't get to do Naomi, the one that he blows up in the helicopter. So we're still at 3.
Another one, I'm sure of it.
They didn't get the receptionist.
Didn't get the receptionist.
She was trying, wasn't she?
Yeah. So it's just 3.
She made an impression.
No, it's more than that.
It's more than that.
No, I think it's 3.
Well, 4 if you include the major as well, surely.
What? Oh, it's what? Because so XXX and the major are 2 different personas, so it counts.
Sorry, I'm
as
thinking
2.
Xander. I'm thinking of Vin Diesel. Are we talking about the major again? Sorry.
Vin Diesel. Are we talking about Fast and the Furious all of a sudden?
XXX, mate.
By the way, I picked my super up on Thursday. Okay, yeah, fine. I think it was just 3.
Okay.
Yeah. Villains.
Quality, not quantity, then, clearly.
All about quality, exactly. Let's talk about... But he is a little bit of a sex pest still, though, isn't he? There's still a little bit of that hangover from Sean Connery where... So if there's the scene where she works out that Bond is the one who killed her lover stroke other agent, right, from the KGB. And I thought that was really, really well played. When 007 explains that unfortunately in the line of work they're in, people get killed, and in that instance it was him or him. And then she says, that's it.
Oh, go on.
No, go on, Alex.
Well, it was until the end, which we'll come on to later. But
I mean,
you're right. He explained it really well, and you ended up going, "Yep, fair dues. You're both in this industry. You know how it works. You know what's going to happen."
Yeah. So, and she says, "When this mission's over, I'm going to kill you." And then the next scene, it cuts to where they're on the sort of pulley rope thing from the helicopter to go down onto the sub. And he's grinning up at her like a perverted little puppy. It's just if you missed that, go back and watch it again. You'll see what I mean. And there are other instances of all of that sort of stuff as well. But again, just moving on through the rest of the cast to talk about the villains. Kurt Jurgens for me wasn't that memorable a villain. Apparently, the actor was very intelligent and he spoke more than 5 languages and he could act equally as well in each of the languages he spoke. So he was very, very intelligent and talented. But I just didn't think he was that memorable villain. Also, he had webbed hands, which I noticed in one very, very brief moment, but they they didn't really make a big sort of show of that. So
if he's setting up a new new world order under the sea, you would have thought the webbed hands would be quite useful, really, wouldn't you?
yeah, exactly. Or I just wish they'd kind of made it a little bit more obvious. But he was okay. It was nothing to write home about. The star of the show for me was Richard Keel. Absolutely brilliant. I remember being in equal parts fond of him and also terrified of him when I was a small child. And he was definitely my favorite villain. Probably I actually wasn't aware of anyone else from before this film when I was a kid, but anyway, there we go. But villains for you, Kevin. We're going to go to John last because we're then going to get a thesis on Jules.
Jules, definitely. I mean, he's classic Bond villain that everyone remembers. I mean, my favourite fact about Richard Keel is that he suffered massively from vertigo. So being sort of 7 foot, whatever he is tall, he actually hugely suffered from vertigo. So that scene you were talking about earlier on the scaffold in Egypt, where he's up there, actually wouldn't actually do it. He refused to go up there. So they had to get the tallest of the sort of support cast to go up there and wander around the scaffolding, because he wouldn't actually go up there. But I mean, it's great, isn't he? And everyone remembers him. I mean, but bizarrely, apparently, he was actually supposed to die at the end of the movie. When we won't jump forward too long, but he was actually supposed to die when the Stromberg's lair sinks. But they decided that actually it was worth keeping and bringing him back for a future outing.
Yeah. You can, by the way, Kevin, you can jump backwards and forwards. We're not doing this. We're not doing a linear review of this film. This is a
completely
discussion.
Disorganized ramble into any bit of the Bond film.
Basically, due to internet technical issues, due to internet technical issues with poor John and also Phil as well, actually playing musical internet chairs.
Well, you can just play and pause or turn it how you like, really, can't you? So, how much do you get paid for each time you mention it? By the way,
Sorry, did you say play, pause, turn?
Yeah, I did actually. Yeah,
you did.
Pretty good. Yeah.
That means everyone has to drink.
Do you know what? Actually, I was going to comment, and I'll just do it now because it's my podcast. So I can do whatever I want. The last episode of Play, Pause, Turn. Anyone, which actually will be from 2 months ago by the time this goes out, was an Apple versus Android face-off between Alex and John, and it was absolutely brilliant. It was so good. So well done, guys. That's Play, Pause, Turn, everyone. Available wherever you like to get your podcast.
They're getting too drunk, mate. Careful.
Yeah. I haven't drunk or taken any drugs today, by the way. Anyway, right, where are we? Alex, villains.
Yeah, I did love Jaws. I did think he was good. He's just got staying power, hasn't he? He's the kind of one you want to keep seeing, and that I just love the fact that he was doing. He's got different modes of transport to get around as well. So it's nice to see him. Nice to see him traveling, because you just see him walking around otherwise. But it's like no. He's now got wasn't he in a helicopter, or I can't remember what he was in.
He was in a small van.
So it's like a TV truck, like a
That's
telephone
the telephone truck.
Yeah.
And then he was in a car when they had the shootout with the Esprit.
That's it. He was in the car. Yeah. Didn't he have?
It was a Ford Cortina as well.
That was it, and he wasn't in the motorcycle because that was someone else.
Yeah.
So, but I just thought it was funny to see him like chase after them. I thought that was hilarious.
There were nice little touches that the actor had put in as well, because he originally, when he was approached to play the part, so he was I think he was actually filming Silver Streak at the time, the Richard Pryor Gene Wilder movie, and he was approached to play the role of Jaws, and when he had the initial conversation with Cubby, he wasn't that impressed because he saw it as a really one-dimensional kind of villain. But then he told the producers that he had an idea to sort of humanize him a little bit, and they really, really liked that, and so he took the gig. and sort of said to himself, listen, Richard, you're an actor, you can make something of this, and also it's Bond. You'd be sort of silly not to do it. But I just love those little touches to the character, like when the Cortina crashes into that Italian guy's house
right.
and
Yeah,
explodes, and he walks out
vertically,
and
it drops vertically to the roof.
Yeah, exactly. It explodes, and he just walks out of the house and looks at this poor guy whose house has just been destroyed, and just sort of dusts himself off as he trots down the road. And then when he goes through the train window and rolls down the slope, and then sort of gets up and just brushes his jacket off and sort of walks off.
Yeah.
I don't know what his clothes are made out of, but I mean, they're fantastic. I mean, they're very hard wearing, aren't they?
Burn-proof,
the man they couldn't kill, or suits they couldn't destroy. Let's face it.
Exactly.
No, it was excellent. It was really good. I mean, that's why it's so iconic, isn't it?
Yeah, no, totally. And obviously, there's the jump. The jump scene in the train carriage when Barbara Bach opens the wardrobe door and he's in there. That really got me. Phil.
Villains. I mean, really, there's only one that stands out, and that's Jaws. I mean, did anyone actually remember there was 2 henchmen that Stromberg actually had? I mean, the other henchman, since was the only other time we saw him was when Roger Moore, when James Bond goes to find Beckish, goes to his place. Woman answers the door. He's like, well, he'll be in later. And then he's hiding in the back, tries to shoot him, misses. They end up having a fight. But then they have that classic scene at the end after they've had their fight, which wasn't that great. But it's that whole, where's Beckish? The pyramids. And then he just sends him on his way, which they then repeated, I believe, in one of the Daniel Craig films. I think it's
Quantum of Solace. Yeah.
To pay homage to that. And I just thought, that was the only other time that you saw it. So definitely Jaws was the one that stood out. Stromberg, unfortunately, it was all about Jaws. Stromberg didn't really stand out at all. So, yeah. I mean, the star of the show really was the sets and the different locations and the car.
Yeah, well, now you've mentioned it, let's move on to sets and location. I mean, obviously, the first being that amazing opening pre-title sequence with the ski jumper off the slope. Absolutely incredible. And apparently the idea for that came because they saw a magazine with this ski jumper sort of in midair going off a cliff. And so they said, actually, that would be an idea for the opening sequence. Let's get hold of that guy. And it turned out that he didn't actually do that stunt, but he said, but even though I didn't do it, I could do it. And so they found this guy in California and sort of scouted locations where he could do this impossible jump. And in the end, it was done in one take, one shot, and it was just absolutely breathtaking. Obviously, I've seen it before. I've seen clips of it on YouTube, but I mean, I still held my breath watching that. And Carolina was like, because I don't think she's actually seen it, but she was like, whoa, like, she was like, oh my God. And then she proceeded to describe exactly what was happening to his legs and everything in detail, and panicked that he didn't have a parachute. And I said, don't worry, he's got a parachute. And being that she's very anti-Brexiteer, she wasn't that impressed when the parachute opened. But, what can you do?
Well, it was 77, wasn't it? It was the Jubilee year. Rick Sylvester, that was the name of the stuff.
Rick Sylvester,
but it almost went horribly wrong. So if you watch really carefully, when he opens the parachute and starts descending, of course, he's kicked the skis off, but the skis, of course, descend quicker than Amanda's and the parachute. So one of the skis almost takes out the parachute as he's going down. So it was a bit, apparently it actually almost ended up in a bit of a disaster, really.
Wow.
I noticed when that scene was on that the very last lingering shot where you see the dangerous flipping ski, just to the top left corner of that shot, you can just see a little bit of camera lens or something going on. And I noticed that. And then when I did a bit of research about this, apparently everyone else has stopped filming, thinking the stunt wouldn't work. And one lone cameraman decided just to keep rolling and zoomed in on it and caught it. Because the whole of that sequence is one take, it's all uncut. which in this day and age you'd never see, would you?
Yeah.
No.
No, definitely not.
So it is amazing, and well worth the $30,000 he was paid for it to do that shot.
Yeah, I mean that's it. I
with
think that
bonuses.
that sequence alone cost a total of $250,000. Was
mean,
it
the one
worth
thing-
it? Yeah, it was.
Yes, it
For
was.
me, it was totally
Very
worth
good
it.
sequence, yeah. Although Bond does look like a bit Banana Man, doesn't he? I mean, secret agent undercover and in the snow in a bright yellow suit with a red backpack. I mean, how
But
did they miss
apparently,
him?
well, what really helped more at this level, or Bond, the character, was this kind of elevated Bond up to superhero status after this film. Up until then, he was this sort of smooth talking, martini drinking assassin. But after that, he was. I think that's why the films became so lucrative, because he was like the it chap in terms of superheroes, and that's exactly what the franchise needed really after Connery left.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the locations were all amazing. This was a visually stunning film. They just went grand in every way. I mean, the sets were absolutely fantastic as well, and they actually had an Academy Award nomination for set design, and it was so well deserved. And I'm going to mix special effects in with sets here because they're part and parcel of the same thing, but I didn't realize until afterwards when I started to do my homework that massive super tanker that's swallowing all those little submarines was it was a model. They used so many models in this film, miniatures, sorry, and the work that went in, it was just absolutely incredible. I mean, tankers of that size will create a sort of wave behind them that's 2-3 miles long. And to be able to build something to scale where the audience would just believe that, I mean, even the Stromberg's kind of thing on stilts that comes in and out of the water, that was based on a Japanese underwater laboratory that actually existed. So yeah, it was just, and then obviously the pyramids in Egypt as well. They were filming out there. They had loads of problems in Egypt, by the way. So Richard Keel, when he got out there finally, his luggage got lost, and unfortunately, it was the bag that had all his clothes and his shoes in. And the guy's like 7'4" or whatever. So they had to really quickly get someone to make his shoes bespoke. And it's like they were looking at these things when they were already saying like you could literally row down the Nile in them. They looked like flipping canoes. They had food issues as well because apparently the food wasn't very good out there. So Cubby basically paid for steak and lamb and chicken and all this other amazing stuff to be shipped over or flown over. But unfortunately, someone forgot to turn the refrigerator on. So by the time it landed in Egypt, it was all completely perished. So in the end, Cubby basically had to fly in pasta and tomatoes, and then he made a spaghetti with the ragu, and that's how they fed the cast and crew. They had a problem with accommodation as well because the government decided that there was going to be some sort of summit or whatever. So they basically took over the 2 major hotels in Cairo. So they had to basically camp instead. So many problems beset this film from start to finish. It's just amazing that they got to the finished product that they did. And thank God they did as well. The 007 stage at Pinewood is a direct result of this movie because they just decide, so the volcano sequence in You Only Live Twice, the inside of the set looks like what we know and love. The outside of it looked like an absolute disaster. So the set designer, I can't remember his name, but he decided that he would build the ship set around the stage, but they didn't have a stage big enough. So they spent $600,000, built the 007 stage. The film company United Artists were not happy about that much money being spent just on a stage, just for that set, and they convinced them that it would leave a legacy, and a legacy it did leave. I mean, how many famous movies have been shot? How many times do you hear makings of for things like Indiana Jones and so many films, after that, where they say, it was shot on the 007 stage. It's still there today. And, it really helped boost and make England the epicenter of filmmaking for such a long time. This film, I'm sorry, I'm going off on one now, but the more and more this film settled over the last 24 hours, the more I just realized how important this film was. We wouldn't have the Bond franchise as it is today if it hadn't been for this film. This was a make or break. We wouldn't have the 007 soundstage. This film set the tone for so much in terms of music, soundtrack, formula for future films, stunts, set design, special effects, and so it's just absolutely like flipping brilliant. Do you know what? I'm going to watch it again after this.
Ken Adam was the set designer or
Indeed,
production
yeah.
designer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could hold 1.2 million gallons of water.
Yeah.
Which is madness.
Yeah.
What a legend.
I was going to say, Tailoring Talk Bond-athon, sponsored by the British Film Institute.
Yeah. I'll take the money wherever I can get it, trust me. So yeah, Phil, I wanted to ask you about what you thought about, because it's something that you've commented on before, and I particularly remember you really loved On Her Majesty's Secret Service because of the scope of that, particularly the Piz Gloria thing with the skiing and all of that on the mountain. And then You Only Live Twice was one that you were really disappointed with because you just found it quite dark and sort of dull and very self-contained. So how was this for you? Because this was a real globe-trotting adventure. I mean, when you look at the locations list at the end of the film, it's probably the longest of any of the 10 Bond films that we've now seen to date.
I think also about the different locations that they went to, the fact that we went to Egypt and they really sold Egypt, because they basically sold it very much as a tourist destination, whereas in the 70s, not that many people would have really been able to see these exotic locations. So you actually see the tourists actually looking at the pyramids, and you've got that voice of what was the villain from Diamonds Are Forever, who did the voice at the pyramids.
Yeah, Charles Gray, who was also in
Charles Gray.
Other Sean Connery Bond film.
Yeah. So you had that sort of element. You had the really huge scenes, because what they did was they didn't just shoot the scenes in the location. That was it. They actually made the locations the star. So when you got to Egypt, when they actually finished off coming out of the telephone van, and they're looking for Jaws, they pull out and you see the really tall pillars of Egypt, which I really loved. You have to suspend your disbelief a bit because they were in the car all night and they come out, there's not a bead of sweat on either of them. But they go out in this piping hot, Egypt weather. They would have been cooked in that van. And then you've got Sardinia. What I loved about Sardinia, when they actually were panning out and you'd actually see the locations, but I really loved the hotel suite decoration inside the hotel suite. Leading up to this point, we've all been complaining about the real old style interiors of the hotels that we'd seen James Bond in. But in this one, you had this beautiful soft furnishings, lovely location, and you would enjoy staying in that hotel room now. And so they took us somewhere. They took us on a journey. And then it finished off with the beautiful location in the hangar in Scotland, which really made it feel ultra British at the end, which I really loved. So
yeah, no, totally. No, we haven't talked about the title sequence, which was the first time a Bond actor was featured in a title sequence for any of these films. And then we have that wonderful song from Carly Simon, Nobody Does It Better. Thanks, Kevin, for the pun at the start of the episode. I am going to use that because I have to do like a 20th anniversary reel, and we've been trying to find the music for that, but I think
you have that free.
Yeah, thanks.
For a shirt, maybe.
I wasn't going to pay for you anyway. I pay for it anyway. I that's one of the Bond theme songs that I really, really love. It's a little bit more kind of understated, I think you could say. It hasn't got the sort of, the kind of loud impact of some of the previous Shirley Bassey, Lulu keeps springing to mind for some reason. But I just really
I'd
love that
forgotten
song.
about Lulu. Thanks, Bobby.
Sorry. So yeah, but let's go, Kevin. Of the 10 Bond theme songs that we have heard so far, where does that rank for you?
Top 3, I reckon.
Whoa. What would your top 3 been? What are the other 2?
Okay, so all the other 2. Shirley's got to be in there. Probably Diamonds Are Forever.
Okay.
I just love the theme tune to Skyfall. I just think it just encapsulates that.
No, I meant the 10 so far.
Oh, the 10
and that we haven't seen anything past this one.
Yeah, they don't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it'll have to be top 2 then, won't it? In which case, there you go. Now, is it now, because it doesn't have the name of the movie in the title of the song? So I'm trying to work out how many other Bond theme tunes don't have the title of the movie as the.
That's a really good one. Okay, that's well done, Kevin. Okay, so we can just all do a free fall here, but that boring one from Spectre, The Writings on the Wall by Sam Smith.
Yeah, that's one.
One that you always
You Know My Name or something. What film was that?
Chris Cornell, Casino Royale. Yeah.
Casino Royale. Yeah.
The Octopussy, whatever the song was for that, Rita Coolidge, I think, which is one of Richard Gore's all-time favorite Bond songs. What's the song?
High, that's it,
all time high.
All the time in the world as well. Yeah, didn't have it wasn't called Her Majesty's Secret Service, was it? The song
All the Time in the World.
Yeah, but technically it wasn't the theme song, was it?
Yeah.
No, but I think up to this point, these first 10 movies, this is the second one or first one up until this point that it didn't have a title in the
Doctor No. I don't remember a Doctor No song.
It's in the lyrics though. The Spy Who Loved Me is in the lyrics though.
It is in the lyrics, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not the song title, I guess. That's the obscure pub quiz question.
Yeah.
Great song though.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Absolutely fantastic. There wasn't really much controversy going on around this song. She obviously just I couldn't really find much about it. I think she just turned up and sang it and it was fine. There was none of the drama that Nancy Sinatra went through. There was no, sort of fainting episodes a la Tom, what's his name? Jones. And I was about to say Tom Holland, but wrong podcast. We talk about that on Play Pause Turn. Phil, you love your music. You love your Bond theme tunes. Where does this sit for you?
I'm going to sound controversial. Not one of my favorites. The only reason for that is it's just, I suppose I understand what Bond does in that this film. They not only do they rebrand. That
really helps when you're doing this podcast. By the way. Understanding what Bond does really helps for this.
Yeah, no, in the sense that in leading up to this, the last 2 Roger Moore films, they'd written it with Sean Connery in mind.
Mm-hmm.
This one, they'd kind of redone everything so that it played to his strengths. And so they probably felt they maybe had to do that with the soundtrack. I mean, the first thing I wrote as he's coming out of the cabin in Austria is, when the Bond soundtrack comes out, the first thing I say is, Bond has gone disco.
Oh yeah,
because they kind of had that.
It's got that
they had that kind of
wah guitar sound.
Yeah,
that was the riff from "You Should Be Dancing," wasn't it? From Saturday.
Yeah, it was that kind
Saturday
of
Night Fever.
Yeah, so they got that going on.
Make me laugh.
And
Kevin's got his role going.
Yeah, and then Bond comes out, and then the song comes out, and it's a very safe choice because Carly Simon's hugely popular at the time. But I don't think it was necessarily particularly original or iconic. It's just it could have been released as anything or any soundtrack of the time. It's not iconic enough as a Bond soundtrack for me.
So basically, one of the early drafts was by Anthony Burgess, who wrote A Clockwork Orange. So not bad pedigree there, although I've never actually seen that film.
Oh, you need to watch it. It's a good film.
Is it?
With an amazing soundtrack as well.
Why do I think it's a scary film?
It's disturbing.
Yeah, it's got a pretty nasty rape sequence in it, and the immersion therapy is pretty awful in the film as well.
Okay, so maybe that is one that I go to my grave never watching then.
You won't lose any sleep not watching it, in my opinion.
Oh no, it's one of my favourite films.
So his treatment of the screenplay was odd, to say the least. But he also decided that, so basically his treatment of the screenplay, which was rejected, obviously, but basically featured both Bond and Henry Kissinger naked. It involved a plot to blow up the Queen at the Sydney Opera House, and it involved a boxing kangaroo. He also submitted lyrics for the title song, and I have some of them here. The spy who loved me ceased to be a spy. He shut his spying eye to all but me. Broccoli told him politely where to go. So yeah. So thank God, Carly Simon and whoever actually ended up writing that song. The credits will be in the show notes because I have to adhere to strict copyright rules as I play the soundtrack over this little bit that we're doing here. So Alex, hi Alex.
Hey.
Now, when you were watching this and the first gadget popped up, which was the watch with the little ticker tape coming out of it, which is such an underrated gadget, by the way.
Tape stored. Where's the space for that tape?
Do you know what I did right? When they show, when they show the, they sort of, there's a console on the submarine, and when Bond puts the, yeah, exactly, and the map comes up, and I wrote, Alex, map. They've moved on. He'd be so happy. Alex, when you saw that Timex thing or whatever that watch was, you must have known, or you must have thought, Bobby's going to ask me about every single gadget in this movie. So could you please give us a rundown of all the gadgets featured in The Spy Who Loved Me?
Okay, fine. So we have, hang on. We have microfilm viewer.
Yes.
Ski pole gun.
Yes.
The Seiko Telex watch, which I want.
Yeah, me too.
Can I just have a quick tangent on that? Which is, I've got a label printer downstairs, and it's absolutely massive. You'd think that this would have got like smaller in time, but no, it just remains like the size of a small book. I've no idea why, but it just annoys me. So yeah, one in a watch, please.
This is a modern label printer. It's called a Dymo Electrotag.
I've got one of those, not that exact type, but I've got one that's a slightly chunkier, but it's still massive.
It's bigger than my Apple Watch Ultra, which is saying something.
You guys need to suspend your disbelief here, guys. This is Bond.
Look,
come on,
man. If you can put a ticker watch on, if you can put a computer into a smartwatch, why can't we have a ticker tape in it? Why
what
not?
you don't know, Alex, is on his back was a big backpack filled with ticker tape that led down his jacket and into his arm.
That's right. Anyway, oh, you're so right. Okay, so we had a knockout cigarette.
Yeah.
So they called it Wet Nelly, the Lotus.
Yeah.
And then, so there's quite some interesting bits in there, including the underwater rockets, and the limpet mine, surface to air missile. I mean, this is like a tank, basically.
It's an awesome car.
Ticked all the options list, didn't they, when they bought that one?
They really did. Yeah, exactly.
Do you remember what we saw in Q Branch as they were walking through?
No.
Oh, okay, so there was a spike. Go on,
John. The tray that cut the guy's neck off on that sort of super cool conductor rail. There was the puffs and chairs, like the ejector chair. There was the lethal hookah, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Set sort of flame like a flamethrower hookah. And then there was obviously a foreshadowing because there was a bit where they were spraying this liquid out, and that became the liquid that was in the car in the car chase that sprayed the front windscreen of the car behind.
Yeah, that was it. And there was also the spike that came out of the saddle.
That's right, yeah. With the usual Bond quip.
Yes, yeah, which I had to pause the film to explain to Carolina at that point. So
I feel like that
was a
tray.
fun conversation.
I just want to go back to that tray. I feel like that was kind of left over from the set of The Omen, you know.
The plate glass incident.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing that when I was like 3 years old.
It was house bricks. It was a row of house
Mum.
bricks. If you look carefully, the actual hover tray was a row of house bricks with the metal in between it. It looks really technological, but it's just house bricks. It's like they started making a barbecue and then they gave up and made that rail instead.
Yeah. So talking about gadgets then brings me on to the car, which was the star of the show. So Lotus apparently left that Esprit outside some estate or whatever where the producers hung out in the hope that Cubby would walk out, see it, and then think, I want that in my film. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, how brilliant is that? And so this little British car. Do you know what? Actually, I'm going to shut up and just hand over to Kevin. Kevin, off you go.
It's my moment. But you're right, though. No, I mean, it was a PR manager for Lotus parked it out. I think it was outside the office at the set, and they just left it there, which is great, isn't it? Yeah, Lotus Esprit, designed by real nerdy fact, Giorgetto Giugiaro. Those that know their car designers, there you go. Also designed the DeLorean and the Fiat Panda. There's a track record for you, if ever there was one.
I had a Fiat Uno. That was my second ever car.
I think he designed that as well, actually. But yeah. I mean, the bizarre thing was apparently it was an utter nightmare on set because it just kept breaking down, just overheated all the time. The battery draining, so they had a real nightmare with it on set. But I mean, great looking car. It was
a 4-cylinder, wasn't it? 4-cylinder, mid-engine layout, 160 brake horsepower. 160 is not much these days, is it really?
Yeah, all the best cars. Engine in the middle, power to the back. What more do you need in your life? And then Wet Nelly, of course, was the underwater one, which had to be driven, I suppose, or whatever by a man in a wetsuit because it was completely waterproof.
Yeah,
and it was bought by some bloke called Elon Musk or something. The Wet Nelly was. At some point. I don't know what came of him, but anyway.
Did he send it into space?
Sorry?
Did he send it into space, perhaps?
Maybe, yeah. Well, you would, wouldn't you? Really?
But it was a company called Perry Submarines that turned Lotus into a submarine. They had like 6 copies of it to use, apparently.
Because they had like different ones for each stage of what it did. Section. So there was like one for the bottom closing, there was one for the wheel arches closing, and then there was another one for the little fins coming out. And they had the shot of the Lotus sort of when it first comes through the water after it dives in, that they had frogmen basically hold the car up at the surface and then sort of drop it down, and then they filmed it sort of floating through, and they had to do it time and time again until it sort of floated down at the right trajectory. And then to film the actual chase sequence, which I have to say is like my favorite car chase. Yeah. One of my favorite car chases ever in a Bond film. The only way to film a Lotus Esprit being chased is to put the cameraman in the back of another Lotus Esprit. So they had a Lotus Esprit in front of Bond's Lotus Esprit filming the action. But
so keep up with it, you mean?
Yeah. But I mean, that car was just so cool. That was the car that Phil wanted when he was a little boy, and his dad got him the Citroen 2CV instead. And he's still scarred to this day, as we know.
I had a submarine toy that you could put in the bath.
Oh, cool.
But I think I've still got the Dinky toy upstairs somewhere. Yeah. I think one of my boys might have it. I think we lost all the missiles a long time ago. It probably went the same way as the villain from the Aston in the ejector seat, probably under a sofa.
Wasn't he red or orange in colour, the villain, in the seat?
Blue, wasn't he?
It was a funny plastic, wasn't it? Remember?
Wow.
But
I
great
just
car. There's some bizarre things in that, there isn't there? You notice when the bit where Jules is chasing them in the car,
in the
and
Cortina, the
in a
Ford
Cortina,
Cortina.
Ford Cortina, and he's clearly run out of bullets in his gun, and rather than just sort of lean behind him and sort of take the gun from the guy behind him, the guy behind sort of like leans out, opens the door on the back door of the car, leans out, and Jules turns around, takes the gun from him, and then they close the door again. It's kind of like, what?
Did we mention the amazing sidecar missile that was popped out from the motorbike?
That's it.
Yeah,
My wife
yeah,
laughed.
yeah.
She fell out of the seat laughing when she saw that.
Yeah. Carolina, because we were basically, when that starts, Carolina and I are discussing the merits of chasing someone on a motorbike. Yes, good idea, because you're fast, agile,
Maneuverable.
power to weight ratio. But with a sidecar, no. And then when it gets to the bit where he shoots the sidecar off, we were like, oh, okay, now we get it. but I mean, that was the first WTF moment. And then we were like, okay, this film, all bets are off. They've really gone all out with this. But it was such a thrilling sequence, really. I absolutely loved it. And then obviously just crowned off by the Cortina going off the cliff and dropping completely vertical into that poor guy's house and exploding. Yeah, exactly. But the funny thing, when the Lotus Esprit, because it's then seen later on, obviously, when they decide to go and spy on Stromberg's thing to see what his evil plan is, and it turns out it's to launch a nuclear missile and blow up New York and blow up Moscow and create World War III and destroy everybody on land. When they come back out of the water again onto the beach, and there's the guy who's having the beer, and he sort of, looks at it and then looks back at the car. He's obviously a bit sozzled, and that becomes a running joke because he's one of the assistant directors, sorry, one of the location assistant directors. And he actually appears in like the next 3 or 4 Bond films in cameos, pretty much doing the same thing.
So before that, there's a little toddler that sort of like, doesn't exclaim, sort of kind of, can't quite say, which was apparently Richard Keel's son.
Oh, wow.
I don't think he makes a cameo appearance in a subsequent Bond movie, but there you go. Since we're on obscure Bond trivia.
Yeah, well, I think his wife was pregnant at the time with maybe their second child, I guess. And so his family were flying around with him. And apparently, so in London, they had a custom bed for Richard Keel, because obviously he's so tall. So he's 7'4".
7'2". 7'2" he is.
7'4", I saw in the documentary.
Yeah.
That weather was 7'2", 7'4", tomatoes. His wife was 5 foot. So, but anyway, they had this custom bed, and then
moving on.
They had to fly this custom bed around the world, every location that he was. I didn't hear what you said there, but in editing, I will be swearing at you. They had to fly Richard Keel's custom bed all around the world to like every country that they were filming in. That's mental. Having to accommodate that much for that big guy.
I mean, it's got a roll mat, really long roll mat instead.
Get him a sleeping bag and a roll mat.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah. Apparently he was very lethargic, like he'd lost energy really quickly because of his size, his metabolic rate. He's just used energy up faster than normal people do. So I imagine they had to keep giving him little rests on set and stuff. And there was the stuntman, the one who usually, what's the guy's name? The one that got involved in the shark stuff in Thunderball and stuff. Bob, what's his face? He had to stand in for Richard Keel in a lot of the train sequence as well, and he's the one that jumps out of the window. Obviously, they didn't put Richard Keel through the window; they'd have just completely blown out the whole set. So yeah, there we go. So that's about it on gadgets and cars. I'm getting a new car this week. Sorry, I was asked in the chat to mention it.
I think you need to explain it. Are you having a midlife crisis, Bobby?
No, because it's not. It's not a Porsche. It is red though.
It looks like a midlife crisis car.
I'm getting a Toyota GR Supra Pro, and Kevin's just given a thumbs up. So yes, I'm so happy. It's it's fast enough to kill Porsches at the sort of sub 911 level, but it's not expensive enough for my clients to think that they're paying me too much. So hits the sweet spot. But yeah, and I'm keeping the Mini, and that is the twist, because I was originally going to be exchanging the JCW for the Supra. But I was looking at the numbers and also the fact that I love that Mini so much. And I am going to keep it for the time being.
Which
So, yeah,
which engine did you go for? Did you go for the twin scroll turbocharger?
the
2.0,
3-litre
3.0.
B58, yeah.
335 brake horsepower. So that's basically double the Lotus Esprit from this film.
Mm-hmm.
And a bit more.
It'll be triple by the time I've taken it to Lichfield next week.
And it's over 3 times the size of my car. Because mine has a 0.8 litre engine, so...
Yeah, but you've got an electric car, so...
No, well, I do, but the other car isn't electric. This is Smart Roadster.
Oh, okay. Oh, cool.
That's a whole conversation about that. But,
yeah.
It's not Bond related, but...
No. Could there be a podcast about that?
Yes. Oh,
we should do one, actually.
I did a road trip. I went to the to watch the All Blacks and Wales play this weekend, and yeah, so I took the car, took the Roadster. It's a brilliant road, like long distance car. It's really good fun. Anyway,
yeah, road trip podcast on it. So there's something in there.
Yeah. Oh,
see, the quandary I have is my electric car is dead at the moment. Batteries, not batteries are gone. Brakes are gone. So I've been lent a very, very nice brand new hybrid Hyundai Ioniq.
Nice.
And the problem is, of course, it's so much nicer than my car. I don't want to give it back now. It's a lovely vehicle because it's a hybrid with an S mode on the gear stick, which turns it into there's 2 sequential paddles on the back of the wheel. So you can go from your nice family hybrid, flip the switch, the whole panel goes red and angry and flamey, and you can go off and like poo off a shovel using the sequential gears around the steering wheel, and you feel like a Formula One driver. And then you turn it off very quickly because you realise you're going to kill yourself.
I wanted to do a short cast with my brother, basically just a back and forth on the cars we've owned, but he would totally outdo me because he's just bought a Porsche GT3 Touring. He has an AMR Aston Martin, AMR Vantage Aston Martin. He has just sold the Alpine 110S. And then what's he also? He's got an MX-5, but then he's owned like M3s, M4s. He's had another Porsche at some point. It's just mental. Kevin, you live up the road from him, so I'll give you his address and you can just drive past his house, his front
nick his cars.
Basically nick his cars for me. So yeah, and then whereas mine starts off with Austin Mini Mayfair, Fiat Uno 800. A Toyota Corolla. I'm back in a Toyota, and then a Toyota Auris, and then another Toyota Auris, and then it slowly starts to get better eventually. But yeah, what he has to talk about is infinitely more interesting than what I have to talk about. But anyway, Thursday is new car collection day, so I'll be bombarding Discord with pictures from every single angle. Anyway, there we go. We digress as always. So. Is there anything else we need to talk about? I mean, overall, I think, before we dive into ratings and reviews, anything else anyone wants to talk about?
The only other thing I wanted to bring up was the fantastic scene where we go to the club to meet Max Calvert and we see all the dancers in Egypt. It looked really, really exotic. And what I really loved about this scene was you got a sense of the 2 characters. It was written really, really well. It was a brilliant scene where the 2 characters were talking about their pasts. Agent XXX clearly done her research on Bond, but you got the sense that this particular Bond had the vulnerability that Sean Connery just could never have, where she mentions about his wife, and then he says, okay, fine, all right, you've done your research, I see your point. And then, and I felt that was something brilliant that only Roger Moore could do. But then at the same time, Roger Moore can also deliver those one-liners and the, getting the British end up, sir. that give it his own unique stamp and the slightly raised eyebrow as well. And I really liked the character of Max Calvert. We only see him for one tiny scene, but this is kind of a staple actor that gets into pretty much every film as some sort of nail-on character. He's been in hundreds and hundreds of films, but he was the one character that the two agents really felt subservient to, because he had the microfilm and he had what he wanted, and he just sort of played them off as if to say, it appears that someone else is interested in my merchandise. What are you going to do, Mr. Bond? And then he has to take a call, and that's when he gets done over. But I thought that he was a fantastic addition, and I think he added a little something to the film as well. So no, this film was excellent.
He was.
Sorry.
Just quickly. Yeah. That was Feckish, right? The one who had the microfilm, and then so he's actually
no. I'm talking about Vernon Dobchev, who was Max Calvert in the club.
Oh yeah, the guy with the moustache.
Yeah.
Oh
yes.
yeah.
With the curly hair.
Yeah.
Feckish
is the one that Jaws kills in the pyramids, isn't he?
Feckish
was weak.
He gets strangled in the photo booth, the phone booth, isn't he?
Yeah, that's what I thought in the first place.
The guy who gets in the phone booth, that's Max Calvert.
Yeah, that is. Right, okay.
That is Max Calvert.
So Feckish is the
guy that dies at the pyramids.
Yeah. That's it, yeah. It's easily confusing. All these Egyptians look the same. So that was Nadim Sawalha, who is actually the father of Nadia and Julia. Yeah. And he actually reappears in The Living Daylights 10 years later.
You said what else did we want to talk about? I really think we need to mention for the date it was filmed and put together, how I thought how polished and brilliant the final action sequence was on the Luparis, the big ship, big boat. With lots of grenades being thrown and bodies being thrown into the water and explosions, and the hilarious hanging from the camera scene. I just thought the whole thing was really, for its time, really well put together. When you think about some of the dodgy special effects, especially the island blowing up in whichever one it was, we talked about that before. I just thought I was really impressed with the kind of choreography of all the action, and it was a proper epic baddies in red suits, goodies in blue suits sort of fight, wasn't it, at the end? And I really enjoyed that. Yeah, it wasn't too long. It was just put together well. Sorry.
Yeah. I just also want to say, I also love the fact that they sort of took us away from the stiff sort of London office to meet, Moneypenny and M, and they took us on location to that scene in Egypt. That was a nice little touch where they all just got together, the Russians and the British trying to get together to find their subs. Nice, very nice touch.
And there's that interplay, isn't there, between sort of Triple X and Bond when they're sort of sat in front of the screen there that
one-upmanship
put up, and it's a laboratory, sort of a Stromberg laboratory in Corsica, and then she sort of retorts back, no, it's in Sardinia type thing. There's quite a good interplay between the two of them there.
You've got the Russian and the English M's, looking proud of their their agent, and look how good they are. Mine's better than yours.
There was the other exchange between them at the bar when she orders his drink for him, and obviously he does the same. And there's that sort of back and forth between them, and then he shows that vulnerability when she then mentions, that he was married, wife was killed, and then he cuts her off. And I thought that was just such a brilliant little moment, because Roger Moore is, I always thought he was a good actor when I was growing up, because I've watched him in other stuff, but it really just allowed him to show that vulnerability for a split second, and I just thought he played it so well.
He's very good looking in this film, isn't he, as well? He seems to have got better than the previous film.
Yeah, but then he goes downhill from here, doesn't he? But because the problem is that he's when he was younger, he was such a handsome guy.
The Persuaders and things like that, you mean?
Yeah, but even in the first sort of 3 Bond films as well. But then, depending on the camera angle and so on, because I think he probably he's wearing a toupee as well. I think, because there's some shots of him from behind, and you look at the hair color, and it's sort of different, sort of around this sort of area. So I think they've used some sort of hairpiece or so on, but. Anyway, we haven't talked about clothes actually.
Oh, I was going to say you're missing the big elephant in the room, aren't you? The
I
fashion.
know.
Yeah.
I know. We've got to try and make this thing relevant. Yeah, exactly. So Kevin mentioned at the very beginning,
lots of brown,
brown, beige. But do you know what? So my wife, who always comments on what I wear and has an opinion. Do you know what? I now that she's listening to these podcasts in earnest, so I will just say, if you're listening, honey, I love you very much, and you're always right. And I've just spilled the beans that I'm buying a car on Thursday. By this time, it'll be 2 months in, it'll be too late, and I might be dead. So this could be one of the last episodes of Tailoring Talk
podcast.
Yeah. No, actually, she's well up for it.
The car.
And the car, yeah. Yeah, we've been married too long, Kevin. So what was I going to say? Clothes,
the suit, the turd
so
suit.
He's wearing. So there's one scene. Listen, he is still to date. He is still the best dressed Bond ever. I did write in the gun barrel sequence as he walks across. I wrote flares in big capital letters in my notepad, like exclamation mark. Like the flares are here. It is 1977. And again, the flares all the way through. The only time I didn't notice flares was on the naval uniforms. By the way, they really need to have Bond in uniform a lot more because he just looks so good. I think the only times we've seen him in uniform are 3 times. We've seen Sean Connery in Is It You Only Live Twice, where he's assassinated
in the coffin.
Yeah, this one. And Pierce Brosnan is in naval uniform at some point. I can't remember exactly when.
Is it a funeral?
Possibly. I don't know. We'll find out in 17 months' time or something. So it might have been in Goldeneye, actually. No. Tomorrow Never Dies. Could have been The World Is Not Enough or Die Another Day. I'm definitely right on one of those.
There's quite a few to go through.
I think you've gone through all the
listen up in about 6 months' time and you'll find out.
Yeah. Longer than 6 months, dude. We still got like another 6 or 7 months of Roger Moore movies, haven't we?
Oh, good point.
So yeah, but then he is wearing that sort of beigey kind of suit with the striped tie and the blue shirt, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, do you know what? I need to make a contemporary version of that for myself because that looks so good without the flares. And Caroline is just giving me a weird look, like, do not order any fabric in that color for yourself. But I'm so tempted. So yeah, I just thought he looked great once again. Costume designer, tailors, whatever, they just did such a great job. I want to find out actually if Roger Moore, I don't know this as a fact, but for some reason I get the feeling that he might have been using his own tailor for these films because he does just look so good.
The brown suit was silk.
Was it?
Yeah, it was silk.
Okay, let me cross that off the list.
It was designed by Angelo Roma in a light brown Dupioni silk. Apparently, it wonderfully complements Moore's warm complexion as well as the Mediterranean surroundings. There you go.
Yeah.
The lapels are wide and the trouser legs are flared, but the fit is superb. The suit coat has a clean cut with straight, structured shoulders, rope sleeve heads, a button to front, swelled edges, patchet pockets, and deep double vents. You know, it's like poetry, this description, isn't it? The flat trousers have no side pockets and no method of tightening the waist. I presume he was sewn into it then. The trousers fitted through the hips and upper thighs until the legs start to flare out a few inches above the knee. Do you know, there's some really quite fanatic people on the internet, aren't there, to write this sort of stuff? But there you go.
Sorry, we all just went silent listening to you say all of that, John.
Bond wears 2 shirts with this suit. The first is a fancy striped pattern in ecru with brown. The second shirt is solid cream.
It's like listening to an audiobook. Yeah. It's very calming.
It's very calming.
Made by Frank Foster, apparently, as well.
Do you know what? I think you and Alex should record a series of audiobooks for people that just can't get to sleep.
Yeah. I've been told that people fall asleep when I'm talking, so that's about right.
It's not because you're boring, Alex. It's you have a very Kevin as a super fan of this podcast. I've just anointed you as a super fan of Tailoring Talk. Because you're the only person that listens to it outside of us. I don't think even we listen to it. I listen to it. What do you think of John and Alex's voices? Don't you think they're very Well, you tell me.
I just, I feel as though I couldn't compete really. The sultry, dulcet tones. I mean, they're just made for radio, aren't they? Really?
Well, exactly. Well, the faces certainly are.
Faces for radio. That's it.
I was trying exactly. You got a voice made for radio and a face for
Right. Let's wrap this up. And
Bobby, one more thing.
Yes, Alex.
Escape pod.
Oh, shark. Oh, we got to talk about the shark. This is my animal for welfare bit. Was that shark real when Jules bit into it? What the frick? Like, seriously, does anyone... I can't find anything about that poor shark.
I'm pretty sure it's mechanical.
It looked really real, though. I have to say, everything looked really, really
latex,
good in the sun.
But it would, they could have, but they did cut to it, so they could have. It wouldn't have been a real shark. It wouldn't.
Yeah, I hope not.
Don't worry. Definitely not.
I'm just worried about animal welfare in the 70s. Do you know what? I've got a sort of on-set prescription from Pinewood Studios in front of me, and so when Stromberg gets killed by Bond, but Stromberg gets the first shot in. So basically, an accident happened on set. Roger Moore got in the way of the chair, and as it exploded, and he got set on fire. So he had to go to hospital or get medical assistance. And I have got the prescription here. Would you like to hear what it says? I need to try and read the handwriting, though. It's doctor's handwriting. Roger Moore. So 8th of November, 1976. It's a memo from the doctor, actually, the chief medical officer, to Messrs. Broccoli, Cartledge, Berkshire, Bailey and File. Roger Moore, the spy who loved me, quote unquote. Explosion on set, A stage, caught Roger on the right buttock, causing various fairly superficial burns to his flesh. Treated with Calaxim cream and dressing. Signed Sherwood Smith. There we go. So Roger Moore did suffer for his arts. Apparently there was a nurse that was then assigned to him that had to change his buttock dressing a few times a day for a little while until it healed up. Poor thing.
And we all know where
James.
that. Yeah.
I really wonder if Roger Moore did do any of his sort of lines and raise an eyebrow at her when she came in to change his dressing. Bless him. Was a bit of a cad, wasn't he? So let's go to our ratings and reviews and wrap this up so I can go and watch it again. Let's start with let's give Kevin first go because he's our special guest. Kevin, the spy who loved me. So you need to do the rating out of 10.
Yep.
And then you need to tell us where it ranks in. Oh, God, this is exciting. We can actually do a Tailoring Talk Bond-athon top 10 now because this is the 10th film that we've seen. So you have to rate it out of 10 and then tell us where it ranks out of the 10 movies that we've seen so far.
So on my patent scoring card spreadsheet system, which ranks based on cars, girls, location, and plot.
Oh, this is complex.
Details. Yeah, it comes out as an 8.5 out of 10.
Oh. Can you share this spreadsheet? I think we should. Should all be using it.
Yeah. Well, maybe for a small fee.
That sounds really good. So hang on, you've got all those different categories, and you rate each of those categories out of 10, and then you give it an aggregate score.
There's an algorithm and a whole complex program behind that, or else it's just written down on a bit of paper. But yeah,
Brilliant. Okay, so 8.5.
I think one of them M1 chips that you were talking about earlier, whatever they were. I thought M1 was a car anyway, but there's the shows behind that.
Yeah.
Okay, so out of the ones so far, I think it's fairly level pegging with From Russia with Love, which would have been my favourite one up until now.
Yeah, brilliant. Alex,
So I'm a 9 out of 10. This is my favourite
Wow.
Bond so far. And actually it still rates really highly. That puts it as number 1 in the, because I think the last one I had was 8. I can't remember which one it was though, so I'm gonna have to look it up. But
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is definitely the strongest one.
Wow.
By a country mile.
Brilliant. Phil.
I'm going to give this one a solid 9 out of 10. And out of the 10 we've seen so far, this does rank as number 1. It was easy to follow. I love the characters. I love the writing. I love the set design. I love where it took us. I felt like we were on a journey. Sounds really cliched, but I've really felt it with this one. And I was trying to take myself to someone watching it in the 70s and how they would feel about all the exotic locations, and also just the enjoyment of, just dealing with just having the Silver Jubilee and then just feeling really proud about, the Union Jack opening at the beginning, going to the very end of the film where he basically says, "What are you doing keeping the British end up, sir?" I mean, how perfect was that? So I'm sure for the time it was amazing. And for me, it's the best one so far. Out of the soundtracks, it's not up there. I would say probably From Russia with Love soundtrack is probably, so far, it's the one I remember more than all the others. The Matt Monro sound going down Venice. That so far has been my favorite in terms of soundtrack. This is the best out of the 10 so far.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Phil. And also thanks for the usual bit that I didn't ask you for. Much appreciated. always get the bonus features with you. Oh, bless you, Philip. We're seeing each other in a couple of weekends' time. I'm going to give you a big hug. John.
What's really interesting, before the other gentleman had spoken, I was going to give this a 9 out of 10 in my number 1 as well. It's sexy, it's funny, it's stylish, it's got flares, it's action-packed, it's got snow, it's got explosions, it's got sharks, it's got a sinking Bond lair that comes up again.
It's basically Full House of Bond bingo.
Formula.
Yeah,
it's the Bond formula. They finally got it all together, haven't they? It's got Bond being accidentally discovered in flagrante delicto with the heroin at the end of the film by the entire military forces. It's got everything, and every single person wants to be Bond in that film. It's yeah. I mean, I'm with Phil. I'm not so bothered about Carly Simon, although my wife loved that soundtrack. I like a more bombastic, high strings, high brass soundtrack, to be honest myself. But yeah, definitely my favourite one of the 10 so far. Definitely 9 out of 10. I'd have given it a 10, except for Carly Simon.
Yeah. Okay. Shame. Poor Carly Simon. So I'm now doing my usual, looking away from you all to look at my board on the wall. And I will give this. I was kind of thinking, is it an 8.75 or is it a 9? And I'm going to give it a 9. Just because of the way I feel about it 24 hours later. It was fun. We laughed. It had moments. The Lotus Esprit basically deserves 5 points on its own. I love the soundtrack. I just thought it was everything. I think it means a lot to me, this film, and because it is it is my earliest memory of Bond, and Roger Moore, for all intents and purposes, was my Bond. Sean Connery, I didn't even know really existed when I was growing up as Bond. That is, I knew him as Highlander though, or Ramirez from Spain with a Scottish accent. And the Prestigio as well. Who's seen that film with Mark Harmon? The Prestigio, Meg Ryan. You've never seen the Prestigio, where he kicks the hell out of that guy with just his thumb? Oh my God! Just look that scene up, right? The Prestigio, Presidio.
Yeah.
Look it up on YouTube. Sean Connery kicking a bloke like the bejesus out of a bloke with just his thumb. It's absolutely brilliant. Anyway, so I give it a 9, which puts it joint top with From Russia with Love. I can't put it above From Russia with Love because that film for me is just so special. But yeah, this did. I totally agree with John. It had everything. It was like the full House of Bond bingo, and thank God for this film. Thank God that it was successful. Thank God they made it. Thank God they did what they did with it. Thank God they didn't let that Clockwork Orange guy script get through, because we wouldn't have some of the most wonderful Bond films yet to come, and Die Another Day. So there we go. Right. So at the end of the film, it says James Bond will return in For Your Eyes Only.
Which is not correct, though, is it?
No, because
Moonraker, wasn't it?
Because a few months after a little independent science fiction film that we mentioned before, low budget thing by some unknown called George Lucas, who just previously made a student film, came out called Star Wars. And the producers' heads snapped round and they were like, oh, science fiction is trendy now. So they skipped to Moonraker instead. So we have Moonraker next. And I need to let Artif Ghaffar know that we are that stage, the sound doctor himself, Mr. Zebrahome Cinema. So I'm hoping that he's going to be joining this madness in a few weeks' time. So I'm really looking forward to that. Moonraker was one of my favorite films as a child because Star Wars was my favorite film. So any film that had lasers in it was something that I had to watch. How are we all looking forward to this? Phil, Moonraker mean anything to you?
I'm afraid it does. We'll have to wait till we get through it. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to watch that again. Yeah.
007, what are you up to? Attempting re-entry, sir.
We'll tell him to pull out immediately.
John, I know you are because it's the return of Jaws.
Do you know what? It's got the best, most lovely, like the most happy sequence in all the Bond films in that film, right at the end.
When Jaws,
you don't want to spoil it.
Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it.
Spoil it. Alex.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to it. Yeah. For the same reason, actually, for exactly the same reason.
Apparently, when Jaws didn't die at the end of Spy Love Me, audiences in the cinemas clapped. That's the villain not dying. He got a round of applause because people wanted him to see him in another film.
Yeah.
Wow. Kevin, thank you so much. Have you had fun?
Oh, it's been great. Thank you very much. Pleasure.
I was going to apologise, but I realised I don't need to because you knew exactly what you were letting yourself in for. But you've been a really great sport. Thank you. And thanks for all your amazing facts on the motor side of things. Love to have you back. So you just let me know. You can pick and choose what you want. And thank you.
I might skip Moonraker.
Might skip it. Yeah, I thought you were going to say that. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Phil. I need to give a shout out because I haven't already to Play Pause Turn. That's Play Pause Turn. You can find it wherever you like to get your podcasts, and that involves Alex, John, myself, our wonderful friend Mark, and Alex's lovely wife Amy. Discussing films and things that we've read and things that we played and gadgets, and very soon we're probably going to have to do an EV versus petrol motors episode. Thank you all so much for joining us once again. As I tell you every single time, we absolutely love making these 007 themed episodes, and I do love getting your feedback after each one. Tailoring Talk is on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast. You can support the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Roberto Rivilla. You can also help us out by reviewing us and giving a rating if your podcast listening vessel allows it. We will be back next month to review Moonraker. Meantime, take care, and I'll see you on the next episode of Tailoring Talk. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That was the most professional bit of it.